The Vraxian Invincible Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Vorkan stood on the bridge of Eternal Dominion, his hands clasped behind his back. He expected to see panic. He expected to see human ships running away in fear. Instead, his sensors showed something impossible. Captain Zeleth stared at his screen, confusion on his face. He ran the scan again, then again. The results did not change. There were thousands of contacts, ships, weapons platforms, defense stations, energy signatures everywhere. This was not the primitive system they had expected. This was a fortress. Zeleth brought up the tactical display. His computer analyzed the human forces. The numbers were shocking. The humans had just as many ships as the Vraxians. Maybe more. The computer even suggested that humanity might have the advantage. Vorkan slammed his fist on the command console. This had to be a mistake. His sensors must be broken. These were humans. Primitive humans. They could not possibly match Vraxian military power. It was impossible. He ordered his engineers to fix the sensors. They worked for 10 minutes and reported back. The sensors were working perfectly. Everything they showed was real. Vorkan felt something he had not felt in many years. Doubt, but doubt was weakness. Vorkan pushed the feeling away. It did not matter how many ships the humans had. Vraxian technology was superior. Vraxian warriors were the best trained in the galaxy. Numbers meant nothing against true strength. Vorkan gave the order. The fleet would advance. They would crush the human defenders and take Earth. This would teach these upstart humans their proper place in the galaxy. On Mars, Admiral Dae-Ho watched the Vraxian fleet begin its approach. Commander Tae-Young stood beside him. They had expected this. The Vraxians were too proud to turn back. Dae-Ho contacted Lieutenant Jiwoo. She was ready at her communication station. He told her to send one final warning to the Vraxians. Make it clear. Make it simple. Give them 30 seconds to respond and withdraw. Jiwoo's message traveled across space. It reached the Vraxian fleet within moments. The message was short. This is your last warning. Turn back now. If you fire on us, we will defend ourselves. You will not like what happens next. Vorkan received the message. He read it once. Then he laughed. These humans were trying to scare him. They thought their numbers would make him afraid. They thought a simple warning would make the invincible fleet retreat. Vorkan gave his response. He locked weapons on Earth itself, the planet where all these humans came from. He would show them what Vraxian power looked like. He would fire one shot, one demonstration. Then they would understand and surrender. The 30 seconds passed. Vorkan gave the order. Fire. The Eternal Dominion's main weapon charged. It could destroy an entire city with one shot. Energy built up in the massive cannon. The weapon fired. A beam of pure destruction shot toward Earth. Then something happened that made every Vraxian officer freeze. The beam disappeared. Not deflected. Not blocked. Gone. Erased. As if it had never existed at all. Zeleth checked his instruments frantically. The weapon had fired. The energy had been released. But it simply vanished halfway to Earth. This was not possible. Energy could not just disappear. Aboard the Earth defense ship Indomitable, Commander Tae-Young allowed himself a small smile. The gravitic disruption field had worked perfectly. The Vraxian weapon had been unmade at the quantum level. The Vraxians had just witnessed technology they would not understand for another 1,000 years. Vorkan's pride turned to anger. He did not understand what had happened, but he would not accept it. If one weapon failed, he would use all of them. He ordered a full assault. Every ship in the fleet would fire everything they had. 3,000 Vraxian warships opened fire. The darkness of space lit up like a sun. Kinetic projectiles, plasma torpedoes, fusion missiles, energy beams. Everything the Vraxian Imperium had developed over 1,000 years of conquest. It was the most powerful attack ever launched in the history of the galaxy. Enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. All of it aimed at Earth's defenses. The humans responded. Not with fear. Not with panic. With mathematics. Commander Kyung-Soo sat in the control center of Orbital Station Armstrong 1. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations. Computers calculated trajectories. Targeting systems locked onto thousands of incoming weapons. The point defense systems activated. Lasers fired from hundreds of hidden platforms. Each laser was guided by artificial intelligence that could think faster than any living being. They hit their targets with perfect accuracy. 98% of the Vraxian weapons were destroyed before they got close. The remaining 2% hit the shields protecting Earth's orbital defenses. The shields barely noticed. Kyung-soo reported to Admiral Daeho. 0 casualties, 0 damage. All systems green. The Vraxian attack had failed completely. General Hana stood next to Daeho. She asked for permission to return fire. Daeho nodded slowly. Make it limited, he said. Disable their ships. Do not destroy them. We are not here to commit genocide. We are here to teach a lesson. Hana gave the orders. Human railguns, massive weapons that used magnetic force to accelerate metal slugs, began to fire. Each projectile was accelerated to 70% of light speed. At that velocity, they were invisible until impact. The targeting was precise. Every shot was calculated to hit specific systems: engines, weapon arrays, power generators. The goal was not to kill. The goal was to immobilize. The Vraxian vanguard, 200 of their finest warships, suddenly went dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapons powered down. Their shields collapsed. Life support remained functional. The crews were alive but helpless. It had taken 6 seconds. 6 seconds to turn 200 warships into floating scrap metal. Captain Zelith could not believe what he was seeing. His best ships, his strongest warriors, disabled in moments. His tactical computer tried to calculate how the humans had done it. The computer could not explain it. Vorkan stared at his screens. His mouth opened, but no words came out. This was not possible. The Vraxian invincible fleet had never been defeated. Never. Not in 1,000 years of war. And now, in less than 10 seconds, they were losing. Fear began to spread through the Vraxian fleet. Officers whispered to each other. Soldiers looked at their weapons and wondered if they would work against this enemy. Some ships began to slow down. Their captains were having second thoughts. Vorkan knew he had to act. If he showed weakness now, the entire fleet would fall apart. He had one option left: a weapon that was banned by every galactic treaty. A weapon that the Vraxian Imperium kept secret for exactly this kind of situation. He gave the order to prepare the quantum disruptor missiles. Captain Zelith looked at him in shock. Those weapons were forbidden. Using them would make the Vraxians criminals in the eyes of every galactic species. Vorkan did not care. He would rather be a criminal than defeated. The missiles were loaded. The targeting was set. Earth would burn, and these arrogant humans would learn what happened to those who defied the Vraxian Imperium. On Mars, an alarm sounded. Admiral Daeho looked at the new threat assessment. His face remained calm, but his eyes grew cold. The Vraxians had just crossed a line. They had just made this personal. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was dark and cold. Emergency lights provided barely enough illumination to see. Admiral Vorkan sat in his command chair, staring at nothing. His officers worked quietly around him, trying to restore basic systems. Captain Zelith approached carefully. He had news. Human ships were approaching. Not to finish them off. To help them. Vorkan could not understand it. In Vraxian culture, defeated enemies were either enslaved or destroyed. Mercy was weakness. But these humans were offering aid to the people who had just tried to conquer their world. A view screen flickered to life. Admiral Daeho's face appeared. He looked tired. Not triumphant. Not angry. Just tired, like someone who had done a difficult job that needed to be done. Daeho spoke in a calm voice. He offered medical assistance, food, water, repairs to life support systems, safe passage back to Vraxian space. In exchange, he wanted only one thing: honest communication. Vorkan's pride screamed at him to refuse. But his responsibility to his crews was greater than his pride. 3 million Vraxian soldiers were depending on him. He accepted the offer. Then Vorkan asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the battle ended. How? How did a primitive species develop such overwhelming power? Daeho was quiet for a moment. Then he began to explain. Humanity had never advertised their capabilities. When they first reached space and met other species, they quickly realized something. The galaxy saw them as primitive, weak, not worth paying attention to. So humanity made a decision. They would let the galaxy continue believing that. While others thought humans were struggling with basic space travel, humanity was actually developing revolutionary technologies. The galaxy's contempt became humanity's greatest advantage. Every cargo ship was secretly a warship. Every research station was secretly a weapons platform. Every civilian facility was secretly a military installation. The entire human civilization was one giant defense network hidden in plain sight. Vorkan listened. He understood now. The Vraxians had assumed weakness based on appearance. They had mistaken patience for inability. They had confused silence with fear. It was the oldest trap in warfare. And they had walked right into it. Over the next few days, human ships helped the disabled Vraxian fleet. Medical teams treated injured soldiers. Engineers helped repair life support systems. Food and water were provided freely. Commander Kyung-soo met with Vraxian technical officers on a neutral space station. With him was Dr. Yan Wu, one of humanity's top scientists. They shared information that would change how the galaxy understood human history. Dr. Yan Wu explained humanity's approach to technology. Where most species specialized in one area, humans studied everything. Where others took centuries to develop new ideas, humans embraced rapid testing and creative solutions. Where peaceful species avoided military innovation, humans studied war with the same intensity they studied medicine, art, and philosophy. The secret was what Dr. Yan Wu called controlled paranoia. After achieving spaceflight, humans assumed they would encounter hostile species, so they prepared accordingly. Every human child learned both science and tactics. Every space station served multiple purposes. Every piece of technology was designed with defense in mind. The galaxy thought humans were primitive. Humans let them think that, because predators ignore prey that appears harmless, until it is too late. News of the Vraxian defeat spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Species from thousands of worlds gathered to discuss what had happened. Ambassador Kira of the Luminary Coalition stood before the council. She had tried to warn the Vraxians. They had not listened. Now everyone would have to deal with the consequences. Some species expressed fear. If humans could defeat the invincible fleet so easily, what would stop them from conquering the galaxy? Others saw opportunity. An alliance with humanity would be valuable. General Hana represented Earth at the council. She faced thousands of alien species. Many looked at her with terror. Others with respect. Some with both, Hana spoke plainly. Humanity wanted peace. They had developed overwhelming military force specifically to ensure peace. Any species that approached Earth with friendship would receive friendship in return. But any species that tried conquest would face the same fate as the Vraxian fleet. Captain, Bora stood beside Hana. She added something important. Humanity had shown restraint. They disabled ships rather than destroying them. They offered aid rather than annihilation. The Vraxians were alive because humans chose mercy. Please, Bora said, do not make us demonstrate what happens when we stop being merciful. The council chamber was silent. Every species understood the message.
Humanity was giving everyone a choice.
Be friends or be enemies, but choose carefully because there would be no third chances. Ambassador Kira spoke up. She proposed that humanity be formally recognized as a Level 5 civilization, the highest classification in galactic society. Previously, only 3 species held that rank. Now there would be 4. The vote was unanimous. Even species that feared humanity voted in favor. Better to acknowledge reality than deny it. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Deho met with Admiral Vorkan on a diplomatic vessel. Vorkan led the reformed Vraxian government now. The Emperor had been forced to step down. The military had been restructured. The age of Vraxian conquest was over. They discussed trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. Vorkan admitted what every Vraxian now understood. They had mistaken humanity's silence for weakness, their patience for inability. It was a mistake the galaxy would not repeat. Lieutenant Jiwoo, now promoted to commander, oversaw the cultural exchange program. Young Vraxians visited Earth. They learned human philosophy, technology, and history. Young humans visited Vraxian worlds. Slowly, carefully, former enemies were becoming cautious friends. Commander Kyung-soo worked with alien engineers to share technology. Human innovations in quantum computing and energy manipulation spread to allied species. In return, humanity gained access to alien biological sciences and historical knowledge spanning Millions of years. Dr. Yanwu led scientific conferences, where humans and aliens worked together on problems that had puzzled researchers for centuries. The combination of human creativity and alien experience produced breakthroughs neither could have achieved alone. But not everyone was happy. Some species remained suspicious. Some feared that humanity was too powerful. Some believed that any species with such strength would eventually become tyrannical. Admiral Deho understood these fears. He knew that humanity would be watched closely. Every action would be judged. Every decision would be examined. The galaxy needed to see that humanity meant what they said about wanting peace. So humanity began a program of openness. They shared some technologies freely. They helped species in need without asking for payment. They mediated disputes between other civilizations. Slowly, trust began to build. The invincible fleet that came to conquer Earth became a cautionary tale. It was taught in military academies across the galaxy. The lessons were clear. Never assume weakness based on appearance. Never mistake patience for inability. And most importantly, never threaten humanity unless you are prepared to face consequences beyond your worst nightmares. But the story also taught something else. Humanity had the power to destroy but chose to heal. They had the strength to take revenge but chose to offer friendship. They proved that the truly strong do not need to display their strength constantly. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was helping shape that change, not through conquest. Through example, 50 quantum disruptor missiles launched from the Varaxian fleet. Each one was a nightmare weapon. When they detonated, they would create temporary black holes. Everything within 1,000 kilometers would be pulled in and destroyed. Not just ships, not just weapons. Space itself would tear apart. These weapons were banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. Using them was considered a war crime. But Admiral Vorkan had decided he did not care about galactic law. He cared about winning. The missiles moved through space toward Earth. Inside each one was enough destructive power to end entire civilizations. The Varaxian crews watched their screens. They were certain this would force the humans to surrender. Admiral Deho watched the missiles approach. Commander Minji, his tactical officer, confirmed what they were. Quantum disruptors, banned weapons. The Varaxians had just violated 7 different galactic treaties. General Hana looked at Deho. Her expression was hard. The Varaxians had crossed a line. They were no longer just invaders. They were war criminals. Deho nodded slowly. No more mercy. Deho contacted Captain Bora. She commanded the Experimental Weapons Division, the part of Earth's military that developed the most advanced technology. She had been waiting for this moment. Bora activated Project Aegis. 50 defense installations spread across Earth's orbit came online. Each one was equipped with quantum field manipulators, technology that could interact with the fabric of reality itself. The human systems connected with the incoming missiles. Not physically, digitally. Bora's team had developed hacking programs that worked at the quantum level. Within microseconds, they had taken control of the missiles' guidance systems. The missiles changed course. Instead of heading toward Earth, they turned and flew toward empty space between Mars and Jupiter. There, far from any planets or stations, they detonated. 50 temporary black holes appeared in the void. They pulled in nothing but empty space and a few asteroids. After a few seconds, they collapsed harmlessly. The most dangerous weapons the Varaxians had were wasted on nothing. Captain Zelith stared at his instruments. The missiles had failed. Somehow the humans had hacked them, but that should have been impossible. Quantum disruptors used encryption that could not be broken. It would take thousands of years to crack that code. The humans had done it in less than a second. Lieutenant Sang-hoon, a young communications officer on Earth, sent a message to the Varaxian fleet. His words were simple and cold. That was your last chance. Admiral Vorkan felt something he had never felt before in battle. True fear. His best weapons had failed. His strongest attacks had been useless. The humans were not just winning. They were making it look easy. On Mars, General Hana made a decision. No more warnings. No more restraint. The Varaxians had used forbidden weapons. They had tried to destroy Earth. Now they would see what humanity really was. She gave an order that would change galactic history, show them everything. Commander Tae-young aboard the Indomitable smiled. Finally, his fleet and thousands of others dropped their stealth camouflage. They became visible. The Varaxians had thought they were facing a few hundred human ships. They were wrong. So very wrong. Hundreds of thousands of ships appeared on Varaxian sensors. They had been hiding in plain sight. Some had been disguised as asteroids. Some had been using light-bending technology to remain invisible. Some had been hidden in the shadow of planets and moons. The entire Sol system was not just defended. It was one giant integrated weapons platform. Every moon, every space station, every piece of orbital debris, all of it was part of Earth's defense network. The Varaxian invincible fleet suddenly looked very small and very alone. Captain Zelith tried to count the human forces. His computer could not keep up. There were too many. His tactical analysis showed something that made his blood run cold. The Varaxians were outnumbered at least 50-1. The human forces attacked, not all at once. That would have been overkill. Instead, they moved with perfect coordination. Artificial intelligence systems guided every ship. Each Varaxian vessel found itself targeted by dozens of human ships. The attacks were surgical, precise, inhumanly accurate. Because they were inhuman, computers can calculate faster than any biological brain. They do not hesitate. They do not fear. They simply execute their programming with perfect efficiency. Varaxian ships tried to fight back. They fired their weapons. They attempted evasive maneuvers. Nothing worked. The humans had already calculated every possible move. Every shot the Varaxians fired missed. Every shot the humans fired hit exactly where it was supposed to. Within 5 minutes, 1,000 Varaxian ships were disabled. Within 10 minutes, 2,000. The invincible fleet was falling apart. Vorkan watched his fleet die. Not literally. The humans were not killing his crews. They were disabling the ships. Engines shut down. Weapons went offline. But life support remained active. Everyone would survive. In a strange way, that made it worse. If the humans had simply destroyed the fleet, Vorkan could have called them monsters. But the humans were showing mercy even as they demonstrated overwhelming superiority. They were proving that they could kill everyone but chose not to. That was more terrifying than any weapon. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, the lights flickered and died. The massive flagship Pride of the Varaxian Empire went dark. Emergency power kicked in, providing dim lighting. But everything else was dead. Zelith reported the damage. Engines offline. Weapons offline. Shields offline. Communications limited to short range only. They were helpless. The entire fleet was helpless. The battle was over. It had lasted 15 minutes. 15 minutes to defeat the invincible fleet. The fleet that had conquered 47 star systems. The fleet that had never lost a battle in 1,000 years. Humanity had not just won. They had won so completely, so absolutely, that future historians would debate whether it even qualified as a battle. It was more like a demonstration. A lesson Commander Tae-young sent a status report to Admiral Daeho. 0 human casualties. 0 ships damaged. All systems operating normally. 3,000 enemy vessels disabled and secured. Daeho read the report. He felt no joy, no pride. Just sadness. This did not have to happen. The Varaxians could have listened to Ambassador Kyra. They could have heeded the warnings. They could have turned back, but they did not. And now 3 million Varaxian soldiers sat in disabled ships, alive but defeated. Their empire's reputation shattered. Their legendary fleet broken. General Hana stood beside Daeho. She asked what they should do now. Daeho thought for a moment. Then he made a decision that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Help them, he said. Send medical teams. Provide food and water. Offer them safe passage home. And most importantly, talk to them. Make them understand that this did not have to happen. Make sure they tell everyone else what they learned here today. The message was clear. Humanity was powerful enough to destroy anyone who threatened them. But they would rather make friends than enemies. They would rather teach than kill. They would rather build bridges than burn them. The invincible fleet had fallen apart. But in its destruction, something new would be built. A new understanding between humanity and the galaxy, an understanding built on respect rather than fear, on truth rather than assumptions. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The Great Hall was silent. Commander Thalek stood tall in the center, his forearms crossed over his armored chest. Around him, holographic images of alien leaders floated in the air. They represented 40 different species from across the galaxy. This was the Galactic Council, and today they would hear about war. Thalix began to speak. His voice was deep and confident. He talked about the Vraxian Imperium, an empire that had existed for 1,000 years. His people controlled 47 star systems. They had the biggest military force anyone had ever seen. They called it the Invincible Fleet. Today, Thalix had an announcement. The Vraxians wanted to claim a new star system. It was called Sol. At the center of this system was a small blue planet named Earth. The creatures living there called themselves humans. Thalix laughed as he showed images of Earth. The humans had only been traveling in space for 300 years. They had a few stations floating around their planet. They had one small base on their moon. Their technology was weak. Their weapons were primitive. They would be easy to defeat. One of the holographic images moved forward. It was Ambassador Kira from the Luminary Coalition. Her species was peaceful. They preferred talking to fighting. She spoke in a gentle voice. Kira warned Thalix to be careful. She said the Luminary had old records about humans. These records suggested that humans might be dangerous. They might be stronger than they looked. She asked Thalix to reconsider his plans. Thalix laughed even louder. He dismissed her warning with a wave of his hand. Dangerous? These humans? They barely had any ships. They had never fought a real war in space. The Vraxian Invincible Fleet had 3,000 warships. Each ship was powerful enough to destroy a city. Together they could conquer entire worlds. The decision was made. The Invincible Fleet would leave within 1 week. They would travel to the Sol system. They would offer the humans a choice: surrender and serve the Vraxian Imperium or be destroyed. Thalix was certain they would surrender. Far away, near a beautiful cloud of purple and blue gas called the Kelvar Nebula, the Invincible Fleet gathered. Admiral Vorkan watched from the bridge of his flagship. The ship was called Eternal Dominion. It was the size of a small moon. Vorkan was old for a Vraxian. His skin had turned a dark shade of gray. His eyes had seen many battles. He had never lost a single one. Today would be another easy victory. His second officer, Captain Zelith, stood beside him. Zelith was younger and eager to prove himself. He showed Vorkan the battle plans on a glowing screen. The computer predicted they would win in 3 days. Maybe less. The humans had no chance. Vorkan activated the communication system. His face appeared on screens throughout the entire fleet. 3,000 ships, millions of soldiers. They all listened as their admiral spoke. He talked about glory. He talked about expanding their empire. He talked about the riches they would gain from the Sol system. Earth had many resources: water, minerals, life. All of it would belong to the Vraxian Imperium. Vorkan promised his soldiers that the humans would not fight. They would see the magnificent fleet and immediately give up. But if any humans were foolish enough to resist, they would be made examples. Other species would hear what happened and learn not to challenge Vraxian power. The fleet prepared to jump into hyperspace. Their destination was set. The journey would take 72 hours. In 3 days, they would arrive at Earth. On the red planet Mars, inside an underground command center, alarms began to sound. Fleet Admiral Deho looked at the screens in front of him. His face remained calm. He had been expecting this. Deho was a human in his 50s. His hair was starting to turn gray. He had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. Long-range sensors had detected the Vraxian fleet. They were coming. Finally, General Hana entered the room. She was shorter than Deho, but her presence filled the space. She had trained half of Earth's military forces. Commander Taeyong followed behind her. He was the youngest of the three, but he commanded the defense fleet. They gathered around a large table. A holographic image of the solar system appeared above it. Deho touched a button and red dots appeared. Each dot represented a Vraxian warship. There were 3,000 of them. Hana asked if they should try to negotiate. Deho shook his head. The Vraxians had already made their choice. They were coming to conquer, not to talk, but humanity would give them one chance anyway. One warning. If the Vraxians ignored it, they would learn a hard lesson. Deho pulled up classified files. Information that no one outside Earth knew. For the past 100 years, humans had been building in secret. They let the galaxy think they were weak. They let other species believe humans were primitive. It was all part of the plan. The truth was very different. Humans had developed technologies that the rest of the galaxy had never imagined. They had created weapons that could change the rules of warfare. They had built defenses that seemed impossible. Tae-Young smiled slightly. He commanded what the galaxy thought were simple research ships and cargo vessels. In reality, every single one of those ships could transform into a powerful warship in seconds. The entire solar system was a trap, and the Vraxians were walking right into it. Daeho began giving orders. The defense grid came online. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites activated. Ships that had been sleeping in the asteroid belt woke up. Soldiers who had been pretending to be civilians put on their armor. In the communications center, Lieutenant Ji-woo prepared to send a message. She was nervous. This would be humanity's first official contact with the Vraxian Empire. She typed the message carefully. It was simple and direct. The message said, "Turn back now. You are not welcome here. If you continue, there will be consequences. We do not want war, but we are ready for it." Ji-woo sent the message into space. It traveled faster than light, reaching the Vraxian fleet within minutes. She wondered if they would listen. Deep down, she knew they would not. Species like the Vraxians never listened until it was too late. Daeho stood looking at the holographic display. He watched the red dots moving closer to Earth. 72 hours. That was how much time they had to prepare. But humanity had already been preparing for a century. They were ready. Hana placed her hand on Daeho's shoulder. She asked him if he thought the Vraxians would turn back. Daeho shook his head slowly. No. They would come. They would attack. And then they would learn what it meant to underestimate humanity. The countdown had begun. In 3 days, the galaxy would change forever. The so-called Invincible Fleet was about to discover that humans were not the primitive species everyone believed them to be. They were about to learn that patience was not weakness. Silence was not fear. And most importantly, they were about to discover that the biggest mistake any warrior can make is assuming victory before the battle begins. 1 year after the battle, life in the Sol system had changed completely. The secret was out. Humanity was no longer the primitive species hiding in the corners of the galaxy. They were now recognized as one of the most powerful civilizations in known space. Admiral Daeho stood in the command center on Mars, looking at reports from across human space. Trade agreements were being signed with 12 different species. Scientific exchanges were happening with 20 more. Even the Vraxians, once enemies, were now becoming partners. But with recognition came responsibility. The galaxy was watching humanity closely. Every decision Earth made would set a precedent. Every action would be judged by thousands of alien civilizations. Commander Tae-Young joined Daeho at the viewing window. Outside, they could see dozens of ships from different species docked at the orbital stations. A year ago, these stations had been disguised weapons platforms. Now they were centers of diplomacy and trade. Tae-Young mentioned that some human military officers were uncomfortable with the changes. They had spent decades preparing for war. Now they were being asked to focus on peace. It was a difficult transition. Daeho understood. But he also knew that showing strength was easy. Showing restraint was hard. And true power was knowing when to use force and when to extend a hand in friendship. General Hana organized a meeting of Earth's top military leaders. They gathered in a secure conference room deep beneath the Martian surface. Commander Tae-Young was there, Captain Bo-Ra, Commander Min-ji, Commander Kyung-soo, all the people who had helped defend Earth. The debate was intense. Some argued that humanity should expand aggressively, claim territory before other species recovered from the shock of human revelation. They said Earth should build an empire while they had the advantage. Others advocated the opposite. They wanted to pull back, make Earth into an impregnable fortress and let the rest of the galaxy handle its own problems. Why get involved in alien conflicts? Admiral Daeho listened to all positions. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet, but everyone paid attention. Humanity would do what it had always done. Adapt, survive, thrive. They would engage with the galaxy on their own terms, form alliances with peaceful species, deter aggressive ones, share knowledge with those who proved trustworthy, keep secrets from those who did not. They would not build an empire. That was what the Vraxians had tried, and it led to stagnation and arrogance. They would not isolate themselves. That would waste the opportunities they had worked so hard to create. Instead, humanity would be something new. A civilization strong enough to defend itself but wise enough to prefer peace. Powerful enough to dominate, but choosing instead to cooperate. Commander Kyung-soo raised a concern. The galaxy feared humanity now. Fear could be useful, but it could also breed resentment. How would they turn fear into respect? Daeho nodded. Through consistent action. By being friendly but never weak. By being generous but never naive. By being peaceful but absolutely prepared for war. Words were meaningless. Only actions would prove what humanity truly was. Captain Bora mentioned the weapons development program. Should they continue creating new technologies, or would that make other species more afraid? General Hana answered that question. Yes, they would continue developing new defenses, but they would also share some technologies freely. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, clean energy solutions, things that would help everyone. The message would be clear. Humanity's strength was for protection, not aggression. Their knowledge was for building, not destroying. Lieutenant Sang-hoon, now a captain commanding his own ship, patrolled the outer edges of the Sol system. His vessel was called the Victory. It was one of hundreds of ships maintaining the peace. His job was not to attack anyone. It was simply to be present, to remind everyone that humanity was watching, that they were ready, that any threat would be met with the same overwhelming response that had crushed the invincible fleet. It was a strange feeling. Sang-hoon had trained for combat, but his presence alone prevented combat. His strength ensured he never had to use it. That was the paradox of peace through power. Dr. Yan-woo worked with scientists from 40 different species. They were tackling problems that affected everyone: disease, hunger, energy shortages, climate instability. The combination of human innovation and alien experience was producing remarkable results. Cures for diseases that had plagued some species for millennia. New farming techniques that could feed billions. Clean fusion reactors that provided unlimited energy. This, Dr. Yan-woo realized, was humanity's true power. Not weapons, not ships, but the ability to solve problems, to adapt, to take knowledge from many sources and combine it into something new. Commander Ji-woo ran the cultural exchange program from an orbital station above Earth. Every day, ships arrived carrying young aliens eager to learn about humanity. And every day, ships departed carrying young humans eager to explore alien worlds. She watched a group of Vraxian students touring the station. A year ago, their empire had tried to conquer Earth. Now their children were learning human history and philosophy. One of them asked Ji-woo a question. Why had humans shown mercy? Ji-woo thought carefully before answering. Because, she said, true strength is not about how much damage you can cause, it is about how much damage you can prevent. Humanity proved their power by winning the battle. They proved their wisdom by sparing the defeated. The young Vraxian nodded slowly. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He would remember this lesson. He would teach it to others. And perhaps generations from now, species would choose mercy not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to afford it. The Galactic Council met regularly now, and Earth always had representatives present. Sometimes it was General Hana, sometimes Ambassador Kira spoke on behalf of humanity. Other times it was Admiral Daeho himself. They mediated disputes, they offered advice, they shared resources. Slowly, humanity was becoming not just a military power, but a voice of reason in galactic politics. Some species still did not trust them. That was natural. Trust had to be earned over time, but even the suspicious ones could not deny that humanity had done nothing aggressive. They had defended themselves once, decisively. Since then, they had only helped others. Admiral Daeho was in his final year before retirement. He had served humanity for 40 years. He had prepared them for the worst. And when the worst came, he had ensured they were ready. He recorded a message for future generations. It would be stored in every human settlement. From Earth to the most distant colonies, a reminder of where humanity came from and what they had learned. He spoke to young humans who would never remember when the galaxy saw them as primitive. He reminded them of humanity's journey, from a single planet to the stars, from underestimated newcomers to respected power, from victims of attempted conquest to guarantors of galactic stability. His message was simple. Humanity did not seek this role. They prepared for survival and found themselves capable of dominance. They could have chosen tyranny. They chose justice. They could have chosen revenge. They chose mercy. They could have chosen isolation. They chose engagement. The galaxy had learned what the invincible fleet discovered too late. Humanity does not fall apart when challenged. Everyone else does. But the message ended with a warning. To future humans, Deho said, remember that power corrupts. Today, we are the good ones. We are the heroes. But history shows that heroes can become villains if they forget why they fought in the first place. Stay humble. Stay vigilant. Stay true to the values that made humanity worth defending. Protect the weak. Stand against tyranny. Choose peace whenever possible. But always, always be ready for war. Because the moment you are not ready, the moment you become complacent, someone will test you, and if you fail that test, everything we built will fall apart. The galaxy is watching. Make them proud. Make us proud. 10 years after the battle, the Sol system was unrecognizable. Dozens of alien embassies orbited Earth. Trade routes connected human space with hundreds of other civilizations. Cultural festivals celebrated both human and alien traditions. The invincible fleet was remembered, but not as a tragedy, as a turning point. The moment when humanity stopped hiding and stepped onto the galactic stage. And on a small blue planet called Earth, children grew up learning that their civilization was built on a simple principle. Be strong enough that no one wants to fight you. Be kind enough that everyone wants to be your friend. It was not a perfect system. Nothing ever was, but it worked. And as long as humanity remembered the lessons of that day when the so-called invincible fleet fell apart, it would continue to work. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and the galaxy was better for it.